The massive space station orbited Nexus Prime like a metal moon. Inside its gleaming halls, representatives from 47 different alien species gathered for what would become the most important meeting in galactic history. None of them knew it yet. Ambassador Lisa Carter walked through the curved corridors, her heels clicking against the polished floor. She had been Earth's voice in the Galactic Federation for 12 years now. In all that time, she had never felt as worried as she did today. Behind her walked Defense Minister Jake Morrison. The older man had scars on his face from his days as a Marine, back when humans still fought wars on their home planet. His uniform was simple and clean, nothing like the fancy robes and armor worn by the other species. "They're not going to listen," Jake said quietly as they approached the main chamber. "You know that, right?" Lisa nodded but kept walking. "We have to try. If we don't warn them now, what happens next will be on all of us." The chamber doors opened with a soft hiss. Inside, the room was enormous. Seats were arranged in circles, each designed for different alien body types. Some delegates floated in tanks of gas, others hung from the ceiling. A few sat on what looked like beds of crystal. At the center of it all was the speaking platform. Lisa had stood there many times before, usually to discuss trade agreements or colony borders. Today was different. Queen Zektar dominated the section reserved for the Karathi Empire. She was 8 feet tall, with a body like a giant insect. Her forearms moved constantly, and her compound eyes reflected the chamber's lights like tiny mirrors. When she spoke, her voice sounded like breaking glass. "The little human wants to speak," she clicked to her neighbors. How amusing. The Vorthan Collective's representative was a living crystal formation that pulsed with inner light. It communicated through color changes and had been one of Earth's few allies in past votes. Today, even it seemed distant. The Nephilim delegate floated in his gas-filled sphere, tentacles writhing against the transparent walls. His species lived in the atmospheres of gas-giant planets and rarely involved themselves in solid world politics, but they controlled important shipping routes. Lisa stepped onto the platform. The chamber's translation system hummed to life, ready to convert her words into the dozens of languages needed. "Fellow representatives," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast space. "We are here to discuss the Karathi Empire's recent actions in the Outer Rim territories." A wave of clicking and buzzing filled the chamber. Many delegates were already bored. The Karathi had been expanding for months now. It was hardly news. "In the past year," Lisa continued, "the Karathi Empire has invaded 17 star systems. They have enslaved the populations of 6 worlds. They have completely destroyed 3 civilizations that refused to surrender." Queen Zektar rose from her seat. "The strong take from the weak. This is the natural order. Why do the humans concern themselves with matters that do not involve them?" Jake Morrison stepped forward. Lisa had asked him to stay quiet, but she could see the anger building in his eyes. As a young soldier, he had fought in the last war on Earth. He had seen what happened when good people did nothing while evil spread. "Because we've seen this before," Jake said simply. "On our world, we had a saying, evil wins when good people do nothing." The chamber erupted in what passed for laughter among the various species. The Karathi Queen's mandibles clicked rapidly. The crystal beings pulsed with colors that the translation system identified as amusement. Even the gas dwellers seemed to find humor in the humans' words. "The hairless apes think they understand warfare," Queen Zektar said. "Your species barely learned to leave your mudball. You have been in space for less than 200 of your years. We have been conquering worlds since before your son was born." "That's exactly the point," Lisa said, raising her voice to be heard over the noise. "We are young. We are new to this galaxy. But we are not new to war." The laughter died down slightly. Lisa continued. "Before we reached the stars, humans fought wars that consumed entire continents. We built weapons that could destroy our whole planet. We learned what happens when aggression goes unchecked. We learned what it costs when peaceful people wait too long to act." The Vorthan Collective's crystal formation shifted to a dull red color. The translation system marked this as concern, but also skepticism. "You humans always speak of your violent past," came the crystalline voice. Yet you present yourselves as peaceful. Which is true? Jake Morrison answered before Lisa could stop him. Both. We choose to be peaceful now because we know what war really costs. But choosing peace and being unable to fight are two very different things. The Queen laughed again, a sound like breaking glass. The humans threaten us? With what? Your tiny fleet? Your weak colonies? You have perhaps 100 warships in all of space. The Karathi Empire commands 10,000. This is not a threat, Lisa said firmly. This is a warning. We are asking the Council to act. Send peacekeeping forces to the Outer Rim. Stop the Karathi expansion before it goes too far, before it becomes something that cannot be stopped with words. And if we refuse? Asked the Nephilim delegate, his tentacles pressing against his sphere. Lisa looked around the chamber. She had hoped it would not come to this. Earth's government had given her clear instructions. Try diplomacy first. Try everything else first. Then you will force us to act, she said quietly. And when that happens, this galaxy will learn why. Humans are the only species in known space that evolved from hunters. The chamber fell silent for a moment. Then the laughter started again, louder this time. Hunters? Queen Zektar clicked. You hunt small animals with primitive tools. We hunt civilizations with star fleets. Jake Morrison's scarred face showed no expression as he spoke. Ma'am, with respect, you don't hunt civilizations. You attack them with overwhelming force and accept their surrender. That's not hunting, that's just bullying. And what would humans do differently? The Queen asked mockingly. We would win, Jake said simply. The formal vote was called 30 minutes later. The motion was simple. Authorize Galactic Federation forces to intervene in the Karathi expansion and protect threatened civilizations. The result was 43 votes against, 4 votes in favor. Only Earth, the Vorthan Collective, and 2 minor species supported intervention. Lisa Carter stood at the platform one final time. The chamber was already emptying. Most delegates had lost interest once the vote was finished. They had trade routes to discuss and colony disputes to settle. The fate of distant worlds was someone else's problem. Before this session ends, Lisa said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber, I want to make one thing absolutely clear. Earth formally requests that this council act to stop Karathi aggression. We are asking you, as fellow civilized species, to prevent what is coming. We have voted, Queen Zektar said dismissively. The matter is settled. No, Lisa replied. The matter is just beginning. History will record that we tried to do this peacefully. We came to you first. We asked for help. We begged you to act before violence became necessary. She paused, looking around the chamber at the alien faces. Some showed amusement. Others showed boredom. None showed understanding. When the time comes, she continued, when this galaxy burns because you refused to stop a fire while it was small, remember this moment. Remember that we warned you. Remember that we tried to solve this with words first. Jake Morrison stepped beside her. Remember that we asked nicely. And most importantly, Lisa finished, her voice dropping to almost a whisper, remember our exact words to you today. Don't make us angry. The human delegation walked out of the chamber in silence. Behind them, the representatives of 43 species returned to their normal business, already forgetting the humans' warning. They would remember it later. They would remember it when it was far too late. 6 months had passed since the Galactic Council ignored Earth's warning. In that time, the Karathi Empire had grown bolder and more vicious. 17 more star systems had fallen under their control. Entire species had been wiped out or enslaved. The human research vessel New Horizon drifted silently through space near the edge of known territory. Captain Susan Hayes stood on the bridge, reading the latest reports from Earth Command. Each report was worse than the last. Captain, said Chief Engineer Pete Williams from his station, we're getting some strange signals from the Rillan system. Sounds like distress calls. Pete was a big man with gentle eyes who usually made jokes to keep the crew's spirits up. Today he wasn't joking. He had met Rillan traders before. They were peaceful people who made beautiful art and wrote poetry about the stars. Dr. Amy Foster looked up from her science station. She had studied alien cultures for 15 years and spoke 12 different languages. The Rillans were her favorite species to work with. They never lied, never started fights, and always shared their food with visitors. "Put it on the main screen," Captain Hayes ordered. The bridge filled with panicked voices speaking in the musical Rillan language. Dr. Foster translated as fast as she could. "They're saying the Karathi fleets have arrived. Massive invasion force. They're asking for help from anyone who can hear them." Captain Hayes felt her stomach drop. She had been afraid this would happen. The Rillans had no real military. Their ships were built for exploration and trade, not war. They had never hurt anyone in their long history. "How far are we from Rillan space?" she asked. 2 days at maximum speed," answered Lieutenant Tim Brooks, the ship's navigator. He was young and had only been in space for 3 years, but he was the best pilot Hayes had ever seen. Hayes walked to her command chair and sat down heavily. Earth Command had been very clear in their orders. Human ships were to avoid the conflict zones. They were to remain neutral and not interfere with galactic politics. But the screams coming through the speakers were getting louder. "Captain," Dr. Foster said quietly, "they're broadcasting from their capital city now. The orbital bombardment has started." Through the static, they could hear the sounds of a civilization dying, children crying, buildings collapsing, people begging for help that would never come. Pete Williams turned away from his console. His hands were shaking. "Captain, we can't just listen to this." Hayes closed her eyes for a moment. She thought about her orders. She thought about her career. She thought about the consequences of disobeying Earth Command. Then she thought about her daughter back on Earth and what kind of galaxy she wanted to leave for her. "Set course for the Rillan system," she ordered. "Maximum speed." "Captain," Lieutenant Brooks said carefully, "our orders were to maintain neutrality." "I know what our orders were," Hayes replied, "but I didn't join the service to listen to innocent people die while I do nothing." 2 days later, the New Horizon dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Rillan system. What they saw made the entire crew go silent. Karathi warships filled the space around Rillia, the species' beautiful homeworld. The ships were massive and ugly, covered in weapons and armor. They looked like metal sharks circling their prey. Below them, the planet was burning. The crystal cities that the Rillans had built over thousands of years were being systematically destroyed. Orbital bombardment lit up the night side of the world like deadly fireworks. "How many ships?" Captain Hayes asked. "I count 47 Karathi vessels," reported Lieutenant Sarah Davis from the weapons station. "Mostly heavy cruisers and battleships. They outgun us by about 50 to 1. The New Horizon was a research ship. It had some weapons for protection against pirates, but nothing that could threaten a real warship. Going up against the Karathi fleet would be suicide. "Captain," Dr. Foster said, her voice breaking, "I'm picking up transmissions from the surface. There's a school under attack. The children—" She couldn't finish the sentence. On her screen, they could see the thermal signatures of the bombardment hitting civilian targets. Hospitals, schools, homes. Hayes opened a communications channel to the Karathi fleet. "Karathi vessels. This is Captain Susan Hayes of the Earth. Ship, New Horizon. By the terms of the Galactic Accords, I demand that you cease fire on civilian targets immediately." The response came in the form of weapons fire. 3 Karathi ships turned toward the New Horizon and opened fire with their main guns. The human ship's shields flared and nearly failed under the first attack. "Evasive maneuvers!" Hayes shouted. Lieutenant Brooks threw the ship into a desperate spiral, using every trick he had learned in flight school. Karathi energy beams lit up the space around them. One blast came so close it scorched their hull. "Shields down to 30%, reported Chief Williams. "We can't take another hit like that." Hayes made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. She opened an emergency channel to Earth Command, broadcasting on the highest priority frequency. "Earth Command, this is Captain Susan Hayes aboard the New Horizon. I am in the Rillan system. The Karathi Empire is conducting orbital bombardment of civilian targets, including schools and hospitals. They have fired on my ship without provocation. I am requesting immediate authorization to engage under Protocol 7. The response came back within minutes. It was short and came directly from Earth's military command. Authorization granted. Rules of engagement are now unlimited. All human ships in your sector are being notified. God help us all. Hayes felt a chill run down her spine. Protocol 7 was something every human military officer knew about, but hoped never to see activated. It meant the gloves were coming off. It meant humanity was done playing by galactic rules. All stations battle alert, she announced to her crew. Transmit our situation to all human vessels in range. Tell them what we've seen here. Within hours, the message had spread through human space faster than any official communication. Ship captains who had served together, engineers who had gone to the same academies, scientists who had worked on the same projects. The human fleet was small compared to the galactic powers, but it was connected in ways the aliens didn't understand. On Luna Base, Admiral Robert Chen received the emergency call at 3 a.m. His wife Karen woke up when she heard him cursing in the next room. "Rob, what's wrong?" "The Karathi just made the biggest mistake in galactic history," he said grimly. "They fired on a human ship. They're targeting civilian populations. It's starting. The thing you always said would never happen. The thing I prayed would never happen." He was already putting on his uniform. "I have to go. The President is activating everything." Across human space, military commanders received the same message. Deep space monitoring stations began broadcasting coded signals. Ships that had been on routine patrols suddenly changed course. Bases that the galaxy thought were research facilities began opening hidden sections. Captain Danny Brooks was patrolling the outer colonies when the message reached his ship, the Righteous Fury. Like all human military vessels, it looked plain and utilitarian from the outside. The galaxy had always thought human ship design was primitive. They were about to learn how wrong they were. "All hands, this is the captain," Brooks announced over the ship's communication system. "We have just received activation orders under Protocol 7. All crew members report to battle stations. Engineering, begin full military configuration." In the engine room, Chief Engineer Lucy Martinez watched as her ship transformed. Hidden weapon systems extended from concealed compartments. Armor plating that had looked like simple hull reinforcement revealed itself as advanced protective systems. The ship's power signature changed as military-grade shields came online. "My God," whispered one of the younger engineers. "How long have we been carrying this stuff?" "Since the ship was built," Lucy replied. "We just never told anyone about it." Communications Officer Tony Jackson monitored subspace frequencies as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Human ships were appearing in systems where no one knew they had bases. Vessels that had seemed to be carrying trade goods were revealing themselves as disguised warships. But most shocking of all were the reports from the first engagement. A single human destroyer had encountered a Karathi patrol group of 5 ships. The aliens had expected an easy victory. The human ship had destroyed all 5 Karathi vessels in less than 10 minutes. The message that went out across subspace was simple and terrifying. The humans are not what they seem to be. Back in the Rillan system, Captain Hayes watched as 3 more human ships dropped out of hyperspace. They looked like simple cargo haulers and research vessels, but when they powered up their weapons, the energy readings made her jaw drop. "This is Captain Hayes to all human vessels," she broadcast. "The Karathi Empire has just learned what happens when you make humanity angry. Let's show them what we really are." The galaxy was about to discover that humans had been holding back for a very long time. Admiral Robert Chen stood in the command center of Luna Base, deep beneath the moon's surface. Around him, dozens of officers worked at stations that most of the galaxy didn't know existed. For 50 years, humanity had been preparing for this moment while hoping it would never come. "Sir, all deep space assets are reporting ready," said Commander Helen Park. She had been his aide for 10 years and had never seen the Admiral look this grim. "What's our total fleet strength?" Chen asked. 843 combat vessels now fully operational, sir. Another 200 coming online within the next 6 hours. Chen nodded slowly. The galaxy thought humanity had maybe 100 warships total. They were about to learn that humans were very good at hiding things. On Earth, President Elizabeth Warren sat in the Situation Room with her military advisors. The weight of what they were about to unleash pressed down on everyone, in the room like a heavy blanket. "Madam President," said General Kevin Lewis, "once we do this, there's no going back. The galaxy will never see us the same way again. Kevin, they fired on our people. They're committing genocide while we watch. We tried to warn them." The president's voice was steady, but her hands shook slightly as she signed the authorization papers. Activate Protocol 7, full authorization. No rules of engagement. Across human space, the message went out on channels that had been silent for decades. In asteroid mining stations, workers put down their tools and revealed hidden weapons. On colony worlds, farmers uncovered buried supply depots. Merchant ships activated concealed military systems. The galaxy was about to meet the real human military. Captain Danny Brooks felt his ship change around him as the righteous fury transformed from a simple patrol vessel into something else entirely. The hull expanded as hidden sections deployed. Weapon ports opened along the sides like eyes opening in the dark. "Captain," said Engineer Lucy Martinez over the comm, "all systems are green. We're ready for combat operations." "How long since we've run a full combat configuration?" Brooks asked. "Never, sir. This is the first time since the ship was built." Brooks smiled grimly. Every human military officer had trained for this day, but none of them had ever seen their ships at full combat readiness. They were about to find out what their engineers had really built. In the Rillan system, Captain Susan Hayes watched in amazement as the 3 human ships that had arrived began their own transformations. What had looked like a simple cargo hauler now bristled with weapon systems. A research vessel revealed missile launchers hidden behind fake sensor arrays. "Captain Hayes," came a voice over the communication system. "This is Captain Jim Fuller, aboard the merchant vessel Peaceful Journey, requesting permission to engage Karathi forces." Hayes almost laughed at the name. The Peaceful Journey now looked like anything but peaceful. Its hull was covered in weapons that could level a city. "Permission granted, Captain Fuller. Let's show them what humans do when we stop being nice." The battle that followed would be studied in military academies for centuries. 3 human ships, disguised as civilian vessels, engaged 47 Karathi warships in open combat. The Karathi had numbers. They had bigger ships. They had weapons that could crack planets. But they had never fought humans who had stopped holding back. Human tactics were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Where alien fleets fought with honor and ceremony, humans fought to win. They used tricks that seemed impossible. They attacked from directions that should have been safe. They turned the Karathi ship's own weapons against each other. Commander Grace Thompson, leading a squadron of human fighters, demonstrated something the galaxy had never imagined. Instead of trying to destroy Karathi ships quickly, she deliberately crippled them. Engines destroyed, but life support intact. Weapons gone, but communications working. "Why aren't you finishing them off?" asked her wingman, Lieutenant Carl White. "Because I want the survivors to tell their friends what happened here," Thompson replied coldly. "Fear is a weapon too." The psychological effect was immediate. Karathi crews, who had been trained to expect either quick victory or quick death, found themselves helpless but alive. They could only watch as their massive warships were systematically dismantled by vessels they had thought were harmless. Within 6 hours, the Battle of Rillan was over. 47 Karathi ships destroyed or disabled, 3 human ships with minor damage. The rescue of 2 billion Rillan civilians who had expected to die. But the real shock was what happened next. Across the galaxy, Karathi outposts and fleets began reporting attacks. Human ships appeared in systems where no humans were supposed to be. Bases that had been secret for decades were hit with surgical precision. Supply lines that the Karathi had thought were secure were cut in coordinated strikes. The attacks came from everywhere at once. Human vessels emerged from asteroid fields where they had been hiding for years. Space stations that had looked like mining platforms revealed themselves as military bases. Even some human colony ships turned out to be disguised warships. Queen Zektar sat in her throne room on the Karathi homeworld, listening to reports that made no sense. How could the humans be attacking 100 different targets at the same time? Where had all these ships come from? Your Majesty, clicked one of her advisors, our intelligence reports show that humans have never had more than 100 military vessels. Then our intelligence is wrong, the Queen replied angrily. Get me a direct count of human ships currently in combat. The answer came back an hour later. Over 600 human warships were actively engaged in combat operations across Karathi space. Ships that had never appeared on any intelligence report. Vessels with capabilities that seemed impossible. Admiral Chen watched the battle reports come in from his command center. Operation Righteous Anger was proceeding exactly as planned. 50 years of careful preparation were paying off. Sir, reported Commander Park. The Karathi are trying to send reinforcements to their outer colonies. Should we intercept? Let them go, Chen replied. I want them to see what we've done to their secure territories. I want them to understand that nowhere is safe anymore. The reinforcements arrived at Karathi Colony 7 to find smoking ruins. The orbital defense platforms had been destroyed so completely that it took hours to figure out what they had been. The colony itself was intact, but every military installation had been reduced to slag. There were no human ships in sight. Whatever had done this was already gone. Similar scenes played out across dozens of star systems. Human forces would strike with overwhelming precision, destroy all military targets, and vanish before reinforcements could arrive. It was like fighting ghosts who could hit back. Captain Rex Carter, commanding the stealth ship Silent Hunter, watched Karathi supply convoys through his ship's sensors. His vessel was invisible to their scanners, using technology that humanity had developed in secret. Target the command ship first, he told his weapons officer, Lieutenant Maria Santos. I want the others to see their leader die before we take them apart. The attack lasted 3 minutes. 5 Karathi transport ships and their escorts were destroyed without ever seeing their attacker. The only survivor was a communications officer who was left alive specifically to report what had happened. The message spread through Karathi space like wildfire. The humans were everywhere, and they were no longer the peaceful species the galaxy had known. Dr. Ben Taylor, a war correspondent embedded with the human fleet, sent reports back to Earth that shocked even the human population. Most humans had no idea their military was capable of such coordinated destruction. I'm watching the systematic dismantling of an empire, he wrote, but it's not random violence. Every target is chosen for maximum strategic impact. Every attack serves a purpose. The Karathi built their empire over centuries, and humans are tearing it down in weeks. Back on the Karathi homeworld, Queen Zektar made a decision that would haunt her forever. Instead of asking for peace, she decided to show the humans what real power looked like. Activate the planet killer, she ordered. Target the human colony at New Terra. If they want to see what happens when they make us angry, we'll show them. It would be the last mistake the Karathi Empire ever made. News of the planet killer's activation reached Admiral Chen within minutes. His face went pale as he read the report. Sir? Asked Commander Park. What are your orders? Chen was quiet for a long moment. Then he picked up the red phone that connected directly to the President. Madam President, the Karathi have just targeted civilians with a planet-destroying weapon. I'm requesting authorization for final protocol. The response came immediately. Authorized. Show them what humans do to species that threaten our children. The galaxy was about to learn that making humans angry was a mistake. Making them angry enough to threaten human families was a death sentence. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in the organization's 1,000-year history. Representatives rushed to Nexus Prime from across the galaxy, many still in shock from reports of what humanity had unleashed. Fleet. Admiral Janet Rodriguez stood at the center of the great chamber, her uniform simple and clean compared to the elaborate costumes worn by the alien delegates. Behind her, holographic displays showed the complete destruction of the Karathi Empire's military might. Honored delegates, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast space. 3 weeks ago, your species chose to ignore our warning. You laughed when we asked you to stop Karathi aggression, You called us weak when we begged for peace. The chamber was silent. Even Queen Zektar, who had survived the destruction of her empire by pure chance, sat motionless in her restraints. She had been captured alive as Admiral Rodriguez had specifically ordered. Today, I stand before you to show the results of that choice, Rodriguez continued. She gestured to the displays behind her. In 18 days, human forces have completely destroyed Karathi military capability across 400 star systems. We have eliminated their entire space fleet, dismantled their orbital defenses, and occupied their homeworld. The numbers were staggering. Over 10,000 Karathi warships destroyed, hundreds of military bases reduced to scrap metal. An empire that had seemed unstoppable just months ago was now nothing more than scattered refugees. How? Whispered the Vorthon Collective's representative, its crystal form pulsing with confused colors. Our intelligence showed humans had only a small fleet. Rodriguez smiled coldly. Your intelligence was correct about what we let you see. For 50 years, we've been building a real military while showing you only what we wanted you to see. Every merchant ship that visited your worlds was gathering information. Every trade agreement gave us access to your technology. Every cultural exchange taught us your weaknesses. She activated another display. This one showed the true size of humanity's military. The numbers made several delegates gasp in their various ways. 1,200 warships, fully operational. 500 deep space bases hidden in asteroid fields and dead systems. 200,000 trained soldiers ready for ground operations. And weapons technology that we developed by studying every conflict this galaxy has seen for the past century. Captain Rex Carter, standing near the back of the chamber, remembered his mother's words from months before. Lisa Carter had tried to warn them. She had begged them to act before humanity was forced to show its true nature. The planet killer weapon, Rodriguez continued, was the final mistake your Karathi allies made. When they aimed a planet-destroying weapon at New Terra, a world with 6 million human civilians, including children, they crossed a line that we had drawn in blood. The destruction of the planet killer had been swift and total. Human forces had surrounded the massive weapon before it could fire, but instead of simply destroying it, they had done something that shocked the galaxy. They had captured it intact and used it on the Karathi homeworld's military installations. We took their weapon and turned it against them, Rodriguez explained. But we didn't target civilians. We used surgical strikes to eliminate only military targets. Even in our anger, we showed more mercy than they would have shown us. Dr. Ben Taylor, still embedded with the human fleet, had recorded the final assault on the Karathi capital. The footage was being broadcast across the galaxy now, and it was unlike anything in recorded history. Human ships had moved with perfect coordination, like parts of a single organism. They had dismantled planetary defenses that had taken centuries to build. Weapons that could level cities had been used with surgical precision to eliminate military targets while leaving civilians unharmed. 6 hours, Rodriguez said quietly. It took 6 hours to defeat defenses that were considered impregnable. Your mighty Karathi empire fell in less time than it takes some species to have a meal. Queen Zektar finally spoke, her voice a broken whisper. We underestimated you. Yes, you did, Rodriguez replied. You saw what we chose to show you and thought it was all we had. You made the same mistake that every bully in human history has made. You confused choosing peace with being unable to fight. The Admiral activated one final display. This one showed human military doctrine, translated into the common galactic language. For those who want to understand what happened, study this. Humans don't fight for glory or honor. We fight to win. We don't follow your rules of warfare because those rules are designed to make war survivable. When you threaten our civilians, survival becomes a luxury we can't afford to give you. The doctrine was brutal by galactic standards. Total war. Acceptable. Losses. Strategic destruction. Concepts that most species had never considered because they fought wars like games, with rules and boundaries. But why? Asked the Nephilim delegate, tentacles writhing in distress. Why build such a military if you truly wanted peace? Rodriguez's expression softened slightly. Because we learned from our history. On Earth we had a saying, if you want peace, prepare for war. We prepared for the war we hoped would never come. When you forced it on us, we were ready. General Kevin Lewis stepped forward from the human delegation. He had been a young soldier during the last war on Earth, and he understood something that the aliens couldn't grasp. Every human military officer studies the wars of our past, he explained. We know what happens when aggression goes unchecked. We know what it costs when good people wait too long to act. We swore it would never happen again, anywhere. The Miyu chamber erupted in overlapping voices as different species tried to process what they were hearing. The peaceful humans, who had been model citizens of the galaxy for a century, had been preparing for war the entire time. What happens now? Asked a delegate from the Stellar Republic, a minor power that had always stayed neutral in galactic conflicts. Now, Rodriguez replied, the galaxy operates under new rules. Human rules. Species that prey on the weak will be eliminated. Pirates, slavers, and empire builders will find themselves facing the full might of humanity's military. She gestured to Queen Zektar. The former Karathi Empire will be divided among the species it oppressed. Their technology will be shared with those who need it for defense. Their military will never be allowed to exist again. And if we refuse to accept this new order? Asked the Vorthon Collective. Rodriguez's answer was simple and terrifying. Then you'll join the Karathi in extinction. Captain Mike Davis, commanding the orbital defense platform above New Geneva, watched as alien diplomats began lining up to submit formal requests for alliance with humanity. The same species that had laughed at human warnings were now desperate to avoid human anger. But the most shocking moment came when Dr. Patricia Stone, Earth's chief xenologist, addressed the chamber about the cultural changes that would be required. We're not asking you to become like us, she explained. We're asking you to understand what we are. Humans are pack hunters who became civilized, not prey animals who became brave. When you threaten our pack, you activate instincts that go back millions of years. The lesson was sinking in across the galaxy. News reports showed human military exercises that demonstrated capabilities no one had imagined. Ships that could cloak themselves completely, weapons that could destroy planets or remove a single building without touching anything nearby. Soldiers who fought with tactics that seemed to come from nightmares. But perhaps the most frightening thing was the discipline. Human forces had destroyed an empire while following strict rules about civilian casualties. Even in total war, they had maintained moral boundaries that their enemies had abandoned. The galaxy was learning that humans were not just dangerous when angry, they were precise, methodical, and utterly relentless in pursuit of their goals. The session ended. Admiral Rodriguez made one final statement that would echo through galactic history. We gave you a choice. We asked you to choose peace over power, protection over profit. You chose to make us your enemy instead of your ally. The Karathi Empire learned what that choice costs. We hope the rest of you are smarter than they were. The other age of human galactic dominance had begun, not through conquest but through the complete failure of every other species to understand what they were dealing with. The galaxy had awakened a sleeping giant, and now they had to live with the consequences.
1 year had passed since the Karathi Empire fell. The galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have imagined. What had once been a loose collection of competing powers was now something entirely different. Ambassador Lisa Carter stood before
the reformed Galactic Council in the same chamber where she had once begged for peace. The seats were arranged differently now. Several species that had supported Karathi expansion were no longer permitted to attend. Their former territories had been given to the civilizations they had oppressed. Honored delegates, she began, her voice carrying the weight of recent history. 1 year ago, I stood in this chamber and warned you about the consequences of inaction. I begged you to stop aggression before it forced us to act. The chamber was quieter than it had ever been. Where once there had been laughter and dismissal, now there was respectful attention. Every delegate understood that they were listening to representatives of the galaxy's dominant military power. We didn't want this responsibility, Lisa continued. We asked you to handle threats to galactic peace. We offered to work together. You chose to make us do it alone. The new galactic order was built on principles that seemed strange to many species but were familiar to humans. Strength protected weakness. Aggression was met with overwhelming force. Bullies were eliminated before they could grow strong enough to threaten others. General Kevin Lewis oversaw the integration of human military doctrine into the new galactic defense forces. Alien recruits learned concepts that their species had never considered necessary. War is not a game, he explained to a class of mixed alien officers. It's not about honor or glory. It's about protecting people who can't protect themselves. When you put on this uniform, you're promising to do whatever it takes to keep innocent beings safe. The training was brutal by galactic standards. Species that had fought wars like ceremonial duels found themselves learning about total warfare, acceptable losses, and strategic objectives. Many couldn't handle it and dropped out. But those who stayed learned to think like humans. They learned that sometimes the only way to preserve peace was to be so good at war that no one dared to start one. Dr. Patricia Stone led the cultural adjustment programs that helped alien societies understand their new reality. Her offices on a dozen different worlds were always full of confused diplomats and frightened leaders. The humans have a saying, she explained to a group of Vorten crystals who were still trying to understand what had happened. Those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Your species chose not to learn from the examples we gave you, so now we're teaching the lesson ourselves. The lesson was a harsh one. Across the galaxy, species that had once bullied their neighbors found themselves facing human peacekeeping forces. Pirates who had operated with impunity discovered that human patrol ships didn't take prisoners. Slavers learned that humans considered slavery a crime worthy of immediate execution. Captain Mike Davis commanded the orbital defense platform above New Geneva, one of dozens of similar installations that now protected key systems throughout the galaxy. Below him, representatives from 40 different species came to study human military theory and history. They were learning about concepts that their civilizations had never developed. Total war, mutually assured destruction, the idea that sometimes you had to be willing to destroy everything in order to save anything. The humans are terrifying, one alien student wrote in his report back to his homeworld, not because they're cruel, but because they're so good at violence while remaining moral. They can destroy a planet but choose to remove only military targets. They can commit genocide but choose to show mercy. The restraint is more frightening than the power. Commander Grace Thompson, now leading the elite human rapid response force, demonstrated this principle regularly. Her teams were called in when diplomatic solutions failed. They didn't negotiate. They didn't offer second chances. They simply ended threats with surgical precision. "Ma'am," asked Lieutenant Carl White during a briefing about a pirate stronghold, "the local authorities want us to capture the leaders alive for trial." "Negative," Thompson replied coldly. "Pirates who target civilian shipping get one trial. It's called combat. Execute the mission as planned." The psychological effect of human military doctrine spread faster than their actual forces. Species that had never encountered humans began changing their behavior simply because they had heard what happened to those who crossed them. The Stellar Republic, which had remained neutral during the Karathi War, completely reorganized their military along human lines. The Nephilim Confederacy disbanded their raiding fleets entirely, rather than risk human attention. Even species in distant galaxies began receiving reports about the hairless predators who had conquered known space. Admiral Robert Chen, now Supreme Commander of Galactic Defense Forces, oversaw the expansion of human influence through methods that would have seemed impossible just years before. They didn't conquer territory. They didn't demand tribute. They simply eliminated threats and left the survivors to govern themselves. "Sir," reported Commander Helen Park, "we're receiving requests for protection from 17 more systems this week. They're offering to pay for human defense forces." "Denied," Chen replied. "We don't charge for protection. We charge for reconstruction. After we have to protect people from threats we warned them about." The distinction was important. Humans didn't act like galactic conquerors because they weren't conquerors. They were exterminators. They removed threats to peace and then went home. This approach created something the galaxy had never seen before: voluntary submission to a superior power. Species lined up to join the human sphere of influence not because they were forced to, but because they were safer there. Captain Rex Carter, now commanding the exploration vessel New Dawn, encountered this phenomenon regularly as he surveyed former Karathi territories. Entire civilizations that had been enslaved were now free, and they all wanted the same thing. "Please," said the representative of the Zephyrian people, "let us join your alliance. Let us contribute to your fleets. We want to help you protect others the way you protected us." It was a request that human leaders heard dozens of times every month. Species that had been victims wanted to become part of the force that had saved them. They wanted to learn human military doctrine, adopt human strategic thinking, and help spread human concepts of justice. Dr. Ben Taylor, who had documented the fall of the Karathi Empire, now wrote about the transformation of galactic civilization itself. His articles were required reading in diplomatic academies across known space. "I'm witnessing the birth of something unprecedented," he wrote. "A galactic government based not on conquest or economic control, but on the simple principle that the strong should protect the weak. It's working because humans proved they're the strongest, but they use that strength only when necessary." But perhaps the most significant change was in how conflicts were resolved. Where once the galaxy had accepted that some species would always prey on others, now such behavior was met with immediate and overwhelming response. The hegemony of Sarn made this discovery when they attempted to restart their slave trading operations. 3 human ships arrived at their capital world within 6 hours of the first slave ship's departure. "This is Admiral Rodriguez," came the transmission. "You have 1 hour to release all captives and surrender your leadership for trial. If you refuse, we will demonstrate why the Karathi Empire no longer exists." The hegemony chose to fight. 48 hours later, their species was extinct. The message spread across the galaxy faster than light. Threatening the innocent meant facing extinction. There were no warnings. There were no second chances. There was only swift, total justice. The second anniversary of the Karathi War approached. Ambassador Lisa Carter prepared for what would be her final address to the Galactic Council. Humanity had achieved what it set out to do. Peace through superior firepower had become peace through fear of superior firepower. "We tried to warn you," she would tell the assembled delegates. "We begged you to choose cooperation over conflict. You forced us to choose for you." She looked out at the faces of beings from dozens of worlds, all of them now living under the protection of human military might. "Regret is a luxury for those who still have choices. You made yours when you ignored our warning. The galaxy is safer now, but the cost was higher than it needed to be." The age of human dominance hadn't come through conquest. It had come through the complete failure of every other species to understand what they were dealing with until it was too late. The galaxy had regretted its choice, but regret couldn't change the past. It could only shape the future under humanity's watchful eye.